I think every person from childhood has a moment they remember where they did something bad and their parents doled out a pretty harsh punishment for it that made them think twice about doing something bad again. The one that stands out to me, however, is one time where I got punished for doing something that wasn't even really wrong. When I was younger, there was this kid that used to beat me up and pick on me, and one day I just decided to fight back, and what happened was, as soon as the fight started, the teacher came in, and all of a sudden, I took most of the blame for it. The school board really likes to teach kids that standing up for yourself is wrong, that fighting back and defending yourself is wrong. They'd actually rather you just get the shit beat out of you. But yeah, I decided to fight back, and then I got in trouble for it, and my mom was called. And this is the one time my mom decided to actually have a spine and punish me for something, and she took my Game Boy away when Pokemon was hot. But the punishment itself was so ineffective because I knew I didn't do anything wrong. She wasn't even mad that I got into a fight. She knew I was being picked on in school. She was mad because I got into a fight and she got called in and had to deal with it. Fortunately, I stayed with my dad about as much as I stayed with my mom back then, and he was like great. He disregarded the entire punishment, which is the wonder of having divorced parents. At this point, you're probably asking yourself, why the hell did he open up with that story? What was the point of all of this? And to that, my only response would have to be,
I like stories.
When you look at the character of Bart Simpson, especially in his early years, there's probably two things that he's known for: doing horrible things and doing badly at school. And the season 4 episode titled The Itchy and Scratchy Movie dives into one of the possible causes for this, and that is that his parents go too easy on him.
Our son did something wrong and you look the other way.
But Marge, look at that hangdog expression. He's learned his lesson. Let's get him a present.
Being a season 4 episode, there's a lot of parody, and the opening with the parody of Star Trek is probably one of my favorite parody segments the show has ever done.
Captain, Klingons off the starboard bow.
Again with the Klingons.
Looking at the year, this episode likely was released the year after Undiscovered Country and during the Next Generation's hottest season, but it would have been written and produced probably around the time Undiscovered Country was out in theaters, maybe a little bit before, who knows. But near the end of the original series movies, one of the many criticisms was that the cast was getting way too old and Scotty was getting way too fat.
It's not good, Captain. I cannot reach the control panel.
Couple that with the fact that when this episode was being produced, The Final Frontier was the most recent movie to come out, and that movie is considered to be the worst in the entire franchise. So what I'm saying is this whole sequence tracks, and it's really funny. What sets the plot forward is Homer and Marge going to a parent-teacher interview, and they leave the kids with Grandpa, and Homer takes Miss Hoover and gets all the praise for Lisa's good work, while Marge gets Krabappel and has to take all the grief for Bart's behavior.
Bart has been guilty of the following atrocities: synthesizing a laxative from peas and carrots, replacing my birth control pills with Tic Tacs.
I just want to know why Bart shoved firecrackers up Great Value Todd's ass. If you want a memorable, chaotic Simpsons moment, look no further than the part where Bart steals Grandpa's teeth. I clipped this for my Clerks review, and this whole scene is just chaotic, and it's great. The Simpsons, sometimes they don't go into chaotic territory. They try to keep things more grounded, but when they do, and they do it right, it's some of the funniest shit ever. Season 4 was when they were kind of trying to get away from the Season 3 slice of life grounded concept and go into more cartoon territory with both its story and its humor, and they managed to play it up pretty good. There's something inherently funny about Bart hanging from the ceiling fan by Grandpa's false teeth, or him just chomping into records and then as soon as his parents pull in, spitting Grandpa's teeth out, causing them to just explode. My dad has dentures, and I've referenced this whole sequence pretty extensively over the past 15 years, and I think he's finally starting to get sick of it. The way this whole first act is storyboarded and edited together, where it's jumping back and forth between the parent-teacher interviews and Bart's misbehavior, is actually extremely well done. I love this whole opening bit. It's actually the highlight of the entire episode, in my opinion.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm sure Bart doesn't really mean to be bad.
Now's our chance to be bad.
So this season came out on DVD when I was in middle school, and that's when I had probably the biggest group of friends I ever had. like regular friends that I hung out with and saw all the time, not just school friends. And we used to watch season 4 on DVD all the time because it was like, fuck it, we love The Simpsons, we hadn't gotten sick of it yet, let's put season 4 on. I've mentioned before that ages 12 to 14 is the age where you really start becoming cognitive towards what you're watching, you take it in better. And one of the jokes that really resonated with me and my friend group was the whole thing with Bart reading the Bible. It got to a point where it's like, if we were at someone's house or we were at the school and like one of us just found a Bible sitting around, we would literally quote this and do the whole thing. It's fucking classic.
Boy, time really flies when you're reading the Bible. Ew.
But previously at the parent-teacher interview, Mrs. Krabappel gives Marge the advice that her and Homer need to start standing their ground more when it comes to punishing Bart, as that might actually help his sinking grades at school, stating that if they don't, he could become a sleazy male stripper. And with the Bang Bang Bart joke being one of the funniest things the show has ever done, this episode really just starts going at a 10 straight out the gate. You're probably asking why I bothered to edit that, and to answer your question, I have no fucking idea. Season 4 did a lot of parody, but they also did quite a few Imagine spots, and I hate that they kind of dropped the Imagine spots after a while because that's one of the greatest things they did. First, it seems that Homer finally deciding to lay down the law with Bart after almost slipping again by sending him to bed without dinner is actually gonna, make Bart change for the better, but at the last minute, Homer immediately goes back to enabling him by sneaking him some pizza. Now, I mentioned the story from before, but besides that one instance that was pretty much disproportionate, my parents weren't really strict. They weren't totally soft either, like if I did something legitimately bad, I got at least yelled at for it, but some kids just had parents who could not assert authority, and those parents in this case are the Simpsons.
Sucker.
Homer and Marge cannot get around the fact that Bart is naturally manipulative, and it doesn't help that Homer is kinda dumb and easily manipulated. So it's implied that Bart's bad behavior has just snowballed through his parents' inability to act. It could be as easy as Homer just simply being distracted.
Said I'm gonna punish you, and come hell or high water, Wait a minute. Ice cream truck!
Or Bart pulling out his speech skill.
Dad, you could punish me, but that means you have to think of a punishment, sit here, and make sure I do it.
Aww.
This episode is actually part of a video that I've been trying to put together but just haven't really had the mental fortitude to do, and that is analyzing Bart's ADHD. Because the things he does, like smashing mustard packets on the carpet, or putting the James Bond action figure in the microwave, don't seem like it's really his fault. It seems like Bart has genuinely poor impulse control issues, which is a telltale sign of ADHD. I'm 100% on the whole the Simpsons gene doesn't exist, and that Bart and many of the other Simpsons just have ADHD. Midway through the episode, it's revealed that an Itchy and Scratchy movie is coming out, and of course, being the diehard fans that they are, Bart and Lisa are super excited for it, and it's being made a spectacle of in the news and in advertising. And what would an Itchy and Scratchy-centric episode be without a little bit of a parody of older cartoons? The whole 53% new footage thing is a shot at those Looney Tunes movies they did back in the day, which were mostly compilations of old cartoons with some new stuff that they ran theatrically. Literally the Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner movie, which was just like a few original cartoons with some old shit mixed in. But they're treating the Itchy and Scratchy movie like it's Batman 89 or something. Like it's this big deal, and Bart is super gung-ho to go and has his advance ticket. But everything finally comes to a head when Bart's supposed to be watching Maggie and he gets distracted and she goes off and crashes the car. Which Maggie being able to drive is actually hilarious, like it's a hint to how she would end up being like the smart baby or whatever. But I gotta hand it to her, like she got pretty far before she wrecked the vehicle.
Bart, didn't I ask you to watch Maggie?
Sounds like something you'd say. Hey, where is she?
But it gets to a point where they do something I really don't like. Like, how exactly is this Bart's fault? Sure, Bart was supposed to watch Maggie, but that's on Homer for giving Bart that responsibility. The real takeaway here is, how the hell is Maggie cognitive enough to figure out how a car works to a point where she can actually find the keys, turn on the ignition, and drive it pretty far? Homer does like a hardline stance over the punishment this time, and Bart is forbidden from seeing the Itchy and Scratchy movie and gets ridiculed pretty hard for it at school.
I've seen it 17 times! You guys must be getting pretty tired of that movie by now.
No one who saw the movie would say that. Let's get him!
Ah!
The whole Maggie driving the car thing is obviously them going for a gag sequence, but it just kind of doesn't work all that well in terms of being the incident that causes Homer to finally put his foot down, because again, it's such a freak occurrence. Looking at this, I don't really blame Bart for this incident, yet Homer puts his foot down, destroys his ticket to the movie, and basically prevents him from seeing it for decades. I like that Bart tries to get around it, but Homer has accounted for that, and that he tries to read the novelization and it just isn't the same. I can relate to being the kid who didn't get to see or watch or play something at least once. I can't remember specifically what, but there was something that my parents just really didn't like me watching. It wasn't common, my parents didn't really like censor things that I watched, but still. It all kind of ends with Homer explaining that one day Bart will thank him for this, and this is a pretty solid heart-to-heart moment, which then jumps to the future and shows that Bart in fact buckled down and became Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, just like Mrs. Krabappel predicted. This isn't the first time we've seen the Simpsons future, there has been a few. This is actually the very first time we get to see the quote-unquote canon future of the Simpsons, which oddly enough is just like a proto-Futurama future, which kind of plays on the fact that the Simpsons itself was initially supposed to take place in kind of an anachronistic 1950s setting, something that was dropped pretty early into development. Because this is what people thought the future was going to be back at that point in time. It's hard to explain, but the fact is, this type of future would return in future Simpsons flash-forward episodes such as Lisa's Wedding and Bart to the Future, with future episodes actually playing on this very plot point of Bart going to law school and eventually becoming Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. It is a nice ending though. Homer finally lets Bart see the Itchy and Scratchy movie and even pays for it.
That'll be $650.
And it ends with a pretty nice moment of adult Bart and old man Homer enjoying the movie together.
Which one's a mouse?
Itchy.
Itchy's a jerk.
Yeah.
This is a very good episode, but I'm gonna go ahead and say, as much as I want to drop a 10 out of 10 on it, I think it's ultimately lacking what it would need to get a 10 out of 10. The first act is gangbusters. Like, some of the funniest shit the show has ever produced is found within the first 10 minutes of this episode. The middle is pretty good progression. Bart's misbehavior is really funny, but it feels like it's a step down from the parent-teacher meetings and the gags with Grandpa's teeth. And the Itchy and Scratchy movie stuff is pretty good. I like how we don't really get to see that much of the movie, but the kids are treating it like it's the greatest thing ever. But I find once the episode gets to this point, it kind of grinds to a halt and ends, and none of it is particularly bad. It stays on a high note throughout, but there is a notable decline in quality compared to the first act by the time we reach the end of it. I like that this episode is the first canon depiction of Springfield in the future, like something we see later on, and I like that eventually Bart is going to become a success at something. There's also some good bonding moments between Homer and Bart. Now, Homer really does think he's doing the right thing, even when Marge and Lisa are begging him to let Bart see the movie. Of course, in future episodes, Bart's bad behavior persists because the status quo, but I do like that being forced to miss this movie, I guess he never got it on home video either, made Bart adjust his trajectory just enough to become successful in the future. One issue I have, and this is a rarity for singular plot episodes because a lot of singular plot episodes are like bangers, it's one of the rare times where a singular plot episode feels like it just doesn't have enough to support the singular plot. Like, it could use a B-plot. It's not like a bad episode, it's just like, you know, the episode near the end kind of just grinds to a halt. They blew their load on all the funny moments in the first half of the episode and just spent the last half winding down to an abrupt ending. With that being said, if I had to rate this episode on a scale of 1 to 10, I think it is definitely an 8.5 out of 10. It's a solid entry with some really funny jokes and a good story that they don't really utilize as best as they can. I give them credit for not making the whole last act just Bart trying to see the movie. We get to actually see the the effect the punishment is having on him, but I also felt like they just didn't know what they wanted from this. Nevertheless, I love it. It's certainly a top 10 for season 4, but like it would be pretty low on that top 10. So what are your thoughts on the Itchy and Scratchy movie? Did you have a moment where a parent laid down the law and it had a profound negative or positive effect on you? Let me know in the comments. And next time I'm reviewing a thing, so subscribe, like, and share my videos with your friends. Later.
We're home!
We got